I'm going to make slightly almost boiling water for kombucha. Pan in the sink. Turn on the water. Put about 6 cups of water in there. Over here. Turn this on. Bring it to boil. Almost to boil. Turn the heat on. Get it over the heat. There we go. Now, the other thing I'm going to do for the biscuits is get the flavoring ready for later. So I'm going to put some water in this pan. Over here, turn the heat on, and get that up to temp. This is a spoon I use all the time to stir the tea, and I use a ½ measuring cup of tea in the water. And this is how I store the tea. I put it in a plastic container, locking the lid, and I put the label from when I bought it here so I know which tea I bought. And 5 pounds just about fits in here, or it all fits in here. I'm not positive. I think it fits in there easily. Okay, but there's still enough tea in here for at least a ½ cup or 2 more before I fill up the container. It smells good. And then to flavor, I use different things, but this today I'm going to do hibiscus, which I also get from Tattle Tea. I used to get it from Rose Mountain Herb, but I buy my coffee from Tattle Tea, or Coffee Bean Direct, which is Tattle Tea's part of Coffee Bean Direct. Okay, so what I decided to do though is to put my hibiscus in a jar. This is a ½ gallon jar because these bags don't stay closed. You get them, give you these sticky things, and they just don't stay closed. See, it's getting all over the place. So let me fill this up. Put that in there. I cut the bag down a little just so that it'd be easier to pour. And here we go. But not quite that much. That's left in the bag. Okay. Oop. Okay, that's enough in there. Put the lid on. What I'm going to do is label it. I'm going to take the label off the bag. Take the label off the bag of the hibiscus in this bowl. That's way too much for what I need today. I cut the label off the bag. Bag in recycling and get some tape for the bag. Here's the label. I'm going to tape it to the jar. Put it over on this side. Then you can see the measurements on the side. I use this a lot, so I'm using some better quality tape. Put that on there. Should be okay. There, now my hibiscus is in a jar and ready to be stored. And see how much of this I put in the pan. That water's steaming. So I'm going to put some in there, get an idea how much I put in there. Like about a handful-ish, a little bit more, about two to three handfuls, well, 2 handfuls probably, a couple pinches. And then it just swirl the water a little bit to get it wet on top. Turn off the heat, and then put the cover on. Let that cool down. Now that this water's just started to boil, I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to get the tea. Here's the tea. Half-ish. It's a little more than a half cup. I put a little more in because I'm not just making my 1 gallon tea for kombucha. I make a little extra for the Scoby Hotel. So I'm going to stir that in. The heat is off. Okay. Put the kitchen timer on again for 2 minutes. Start. After 2 minutes I'll stir and then let it go for another 2 minutes. Then I'm going to strain it in a bowl and mix some sugar in. Turning that off. Getting back. There's the tea. I'm going to give it a stir. Steeping. I recommend about 5 minutes to steep your tea. Go back, set the timer again. 2 minutes. Start. This is the setup for the strainer that I use to strain the tea when it's ready. And this is the bowl I put it in. This is the sugar. Use 1 cup of granulated sugar in your tea to sweeten it. The Scoby uses the sugar to eat to make the kombucha, and I put a little more than a cup because, once again, I need some extra sugar in there for the Scoby Hotel. Second time for the timer. Turn that off. Give the tea a little stir again. Move it over to the sink. There we go. Everything out of the way. And pour the pan in there. Get the tea in the strainer. I always add a little extra water from the faucet to rinse out any tea leaves that are in the pan. Okay. Now the pan is done. I'm not going to use it anymore, so I'm going to put that in the soapy water. And pick up the tea from the strainer. And there's the tea down there in the bowl. I'm going to squeeze out the water from the tea. going to put the tea in the compost. It's our compost bin. And I just let that sit there until it cools off. Get over here to where it was on the stove. I'm going to stir some sugar into the tea. Pour the sugar into this measuring cup. A little more than a cup. Pour it into the tea to sweeten the tea. And stir that in. Make sure you stir it in. I've heard stories about people who add sugar to their tea and don't stir it in. You gotta wonder what they've been doing their whole lives. You can hear the granules in the pan, or the bowl rather. Let it sit a little so it can dissolve on its own. And put the sugar away. And check it again. And when it's totally stirred in, you won't hear the granules. For the kombucha, the next thing I need to do is get some bottles ready. But I always need to have this bottle, which isn't as big as these. These are 32-ounce bottles, and they're flip top, so that's the way they can handle the carbonation. We bought them originally when we were making beer, and we still use them for beer. And then what I need to do is empty this, which has some lavender ginger kombucha in it right now. So I'm going to pop the top and pour it in the glass. And I always get a lot of foam. And I don't put any extra sugar in the second fermentation anymore. Whenever I did that, I would get explosive kombucha. It would be on the ceiling and everywhere, and this way I don't have to deal with that. And when I pop the top on these, I don't have to wonder what's going to happen. I just have to make sure my strainer and glass are ready to accept it. So then I have to wait for the head to go down enough so I can pour some more in. So I just keep topping it off. And you let the head get up there pretty high. You don't have to worry about it overflowing. I tried stirring it down. That does not work. You just have to wait for it. Sometimes you can tap the top, break up some bubbles. Almost done. I used the strainer to get any ginger that was in the bottle, and also any residual scoby babies that might have been created in the bottle since I made the second fermentation batch. Occasionally you will get them. Okay, there you go. And I'm not going to drink this now because I already have my coffee today, so I'm going to put this glass in the refrigerator. After I empty a bottle, I always rinse it out. Make sure I rinse the cap. And today, since I'm making kombucha, I'm going to put it in the sink of soapy water, along with 3 other bottles. 32-ounce bottles. So 3 32-ounce bottles, and then I don't know. This is more than 16 ounces. I'm gonna guess it's like 22, maybe something like that. So I'm gonna fill these up with soapy water. Get the bubbles going. Shake. Get the water out into the sink, the soapy water. Give it a swirl and it'll come out faster. And fill this up with water. Next one. Get that ready. This will fill up all the way. I wait until all the soapy water comes to the top and there's no soap sitting on the top. Rinse the cap off good. Put the next bottle under. Get the third bottle going out of the sink. Shake, shake, shake. Swirl, swirl, swirl. Now if they're ever dirty, you can visibly see dirt in the bottle. I have a bottle scrubbing brush. I'll show you that. It's like this, and you can squeeze that in the bottle. It's kind of hard to do, and when you pull it out, make sure your eye's not near it, so you don't poke your eye out. Okay. Soak out of the top of these, and then what I do is the first round, I rinse the cap off again, and I put a little more water in, just to make sure all the soap is out. Soapy water in that. If you see any soap in the water, do it again. There's none. And I just leave those out to drain just before, and then just before I'm ready to make kombucha, they'll be all ready to go. Then what I do is I get the kombucha tea that's been cooling. It's over here now. That's all cool. It's not steaming anymore. And take the spoon out. And I'm going to put the kombucha in the oven. The oven doesn't have anything, I'm not cooking or baking, so there's a shelf where I can put the tea in the bag. And then what I do is I take the hibiscus that was on the stove. That's got a lid on it. There it is in the water. It's all kind of settled down. There's little bubbles on top. Cover that up. Put that in the stove. Then everything's out of the way, ready to go for later. By later on this evening, the tea will be cool and I'll be able to finish the kombucha. You can cool down your kombucha in the jar. It takes forever. You have to measure the temperature all the time. If you just wait a few hours, your tea will be cool. Here's my finished kombucha. It's been sitting in the warmest place in my house, which at this time of the year, since it's spring, it's still around 64 or so in that room. I always thought it had to be around 72, because when we make beer and wine, it has to be 70 something, lower 70s. However, that's not really necessary. You just don't want it to be really, really cold, like 30s or 40s or something. The scoby needs some warm temperature to grow and eat its sugar and everything like that. So here's the bottles. This is the main scoby that I'm going to make second fermentation out of, or the main kombucha. This is the scoby in there, if you can see it. It fills up the diameter of your jar, so when you fill this up with tea, you want to bring the level up pretty high, or the scoby will start taking up that area, which this one has anyway. If you put it in a really big pan that has a huge diameter, the scoby will take up that whole diameter. And then this is the Scoby Hotel, and what I do is I keep extra scobies in here. I used to give them away, and I gave away about 30 of them. But then it got to be a little tiring trying to meet people, people not showing up on time, changing their minds, and then not processing them well, asking for another one. Once you do this, you'll have many babies. You won't need to have more. So I started charging people $10 for my time, and now nobody wants them. Can you believe that? So this is the Scoby Hotel, and there's the scobies, and they will make multiples as they eat the sugar. Like when I take this scoby out of here, there's probably going to be a double scoby, and I'll peel them apart and put the better ones in the hotel, and the ones that have been in the hotel a long time, I'll just take them and put them in our compost. The compost loves the scoby, and there's a lot of nutrients in compost that the scoby can feed on. The other things I need to have to get going here for the second fermentation, so I'm going to take that out of the jar and put it in these bottles I washed. And I have a funnel ready. I also use a double mesh strainer to make sure I don't get any extra scoby into the bottles or anything else. And then I have a little cutting board because I'm going to use ginger as a flavoring. And then I have a grater to grate that ginger. I have another pitcher kind of bowl that I pour the kombucha from this jar into before I put it into these bottles. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is get the hibiscus that I made yesterday out of the oven, where I left it to cool. Take the lid off. There's the hibiscus in the pan. I'm going to strain that into the bottles, and I'm trying to do it carefully because it's red and it will make a mess just like beet juice would. Here's a strainer. I'm going to strain a little into each bottle. Just pick this up, move it into the next bottle. I have 4 bottles. 3 of them are 32 ounces. And one of them is probably 22 ounces. And just check the levels in each bottle. Put a little more until I use up all of this rehydrated hibiscus petals. And hibiscus is the main coloring that you see when you buy Celestial Seasoning Zinger tea. And I read up on it. It's apparently good for high blood pressure. So I'm going to put this in our compost bucket and put the hibiscus aside. Move our bottles up on the counter out of the way, so I'm going to just do 1 bottle at a time. Rinse off my strainer. Get that water out of that. Let that sit in the drain board a little while to drip any extra water out. I'm going to take this pitcher and put it in the sink. Oh no, first I have to do the ginger. so this is the ginger. This is the cutting board for the ginger. Here's the grater. When I buy ginger, I buy big pieces and I peel them, and then I cut them up in pieces. And my friend Jackie told me to keep it in the freezer this way, and then when I want to use it, just grate it. So I'm going to get a piece out to grate. And I probably won't use the whole piece, but I'm going to grate some for the kombucha. That should be enough. Bang off the grater. If I can get any excess ginger off of there. Put that aside. Put my other ginger back in the freezer. It's back. Now what I'm going to do is put my bottles back in the sink. I don't need the strainer right now. And I'm going to put some ginger in each bottle. So I just try to take a little pinch, squeeze it in the bottle. Put it in each one. Anytime you add a fresh ingredient to your bottles, it will cause the bottles to ferment more, and you'll get more carbonation. So keep that in mind. When I first started doing this, I used lime a lot, and fresh lime juice would give me excessive carbonation. So I don't use juices anymore. There's sugar in them, even when they're fresh squeezed, there's still sugar. Okay, so that's done. Now what I can do is use the funnel and push the ginger in the bottle, but the ginger will fall down once I start adding the kombucha. Okay, so there we go. Get the bottles back up on the counter. What I do is I pour off some of the juice into the pitcher from the jars. This is the Scoby Hotel jar. Now you can see all the scobies I have in there. I'm going to put them in this bowl. Put a little of that juice in there, the kombucha juice. So you need to put a little of that already processed kombucha in your new batch. And then this jar, I'm going to reuse, but I have to clean it because see the stuff on the bottom, that's like the scoby poop kind of. So I have to clean that. Okay, now I'm going to do the rest. I'm going to take the scoby out of the big jar here, put it in the bowl. When you're taking it out of the jar, you want to be careful you don't push down on it in the jar because it gets really hard to take out. Okay, and put a little more fermented kombucha on there. Now, what I like to do, pour some of the Scoby Hotel kombucha in each jar because I think that this has less potency than all the other ones, and I use a strainer. The other kombucha in the big jar is going to have more live culture in it, I guess. So I want to use this one in each jar so one jar doesn't have less fermentation later than the others. Okay, and there's a little bit of SCOBY in this strainer. So what I'm going to do is wash that out before I continue. Put the bottles back up on the counter. Now I'm going to take my pitcher again, put it in the sink, grab that big bottle and pour it into that pitcher. I'm going to take the pitcher and I'm going to make sure there's nothing here. If there's anything stuck there at all, it won't pour in the bottles very easily. I'm going to take my strainer and carefully pour into the funnel and watch and make sure there's a space, because otherwise it might not be able to get all the way in the funnel. It'll jam up or something, create a vacuum, I guess. And I pour it up until the bubbles stop near the top of the neck. You can see there's bubbles here, maybe, near the top of the neck. I'm going to go to the next bottle, move the funnel over, put this bottle up on the counter, next bottle. Now that's not full, so I have to get more kombucha. So you always put your flavoring in the bottle first. That way you don't forget later and you don't have room for it anymore. Okay, so I'm pouring it in again, another bottle. Get this in front of the camera, that would help. Okay. These tend to lose some in the sink. That's why I always do this in the sink. Next bottle. Here's the jar. You can see the sediment in the bottom. This way. You have to clean that out. Don't reuse it. It's unsanitary. I've heard of people doing that. Just don't do it. Wash everything all the time and be clean. Okay, I'm topping off each bottle so that they'll be about an inch from the very top of the bottle. Well, no, actually about an inch here. Not in this part. Clean off my strainer, wash my jar, wash my bowl. I don't need, well, will I need that? I might need this. I'm going to wait and wash this stuff. I don't need my funnel anymore. a double mesh strainer. I want to make sure that's rinsed out so I can use it. I cleaned the jar the scoby was in, and first fermentation with the fresh tea, fresh sweetened tea. This is a 1-gallon ball jar. I got it at our Agway store. I think they have them at Tractor Supply and those kind of stores too. Okay. Now what I do is I use some cool water and I rinse the jars. Make sure there's nothing on the top. I take the cap and while I'm holding it, I rinse the jar, then I snap it down, rinse the bottom, turn it upside down, get some of the flavor in the jar. Do that to each bottle. Okay. Clean off the counter. I didn't add any sweetener because of overcarbonation. Now what I do, I take each of the cleaned bottles and I move them over to a towel to dry off better. Okay, so there's 3 bottles, all 32-ounce bottles, and 1 20-something ounce bottle, and I figured out that that's what I need each time for the amount of kombucha I have in my 1-gallon jar and my SCOBY hotel. Okay, and it used to be I did 3 bottles and I'd always have some left over and we'd just drink the kombucha before it had the second fermentation. Okay, now this is the scobies in the bowl waiting for the fresh tea, which I'm going to do now. So I'm going to get the tea out of the oven that I made previously, which is totally cooled now. I'm going to get my clean jar that I just washed. I'm going to put some cool water in it. Make sure the water is cool before you do it. Put some cool water in it. We have well water. We don't have any chlorine in it. We've had it tested. If you have chlorine in your water, you probably want to have some kind of filter so you don't have chlorine in your kombucha, but I have made it with the chlorinated water and it doesn't really matter. But it's up to you, whatever you feel. So fill this about halfway. Get your SCOBY hotel jar. Put a little water in that too. Not too much though, so SCOBYs have to fit in there. But just enough to dilute the tea. Fresh tea into the jar. And take the bowl. Just pour some in the jar. And I'm going to get my SCOBY hotel jar, pour some into that jar. Get this out of the way. That should be enough. Pour the rest in the big jar. This aside. So I have about that much in the SCOBY hotel jar. That's so I can get my scobies in there. And then this jar I'm going to top off to right above where the jar starts to get smaller. Okay. Now each of these jars, put this up on the counter for now. Each of the jars is going to want some of the juice from the scoby. So I'm going to pour the kombucha, the first fermentation kombucha off of the scobies into the strainer and add a little of that. Here's the bowl of scobies that I need to clean up. This is the big one that was in the jar, and it already made a baby. See that? And then what I have to do is clean them off under lukewarm water and get all these threads off before I put them into the SCOBY Hotel and the main kombucha jar. Okay. And I get the temperature not too warm, not too cold. Just kind of like a lukewarm temperature. That feels good. And this one isn't really that dirty, but this is a baby from before. I'm just going to put it in the SCOBY Hotel jar. This is the big mother that was in the main jar, and I'm going to put that one back in. It doesn't have that many threads on it. And I'm just going to put that back in the jar. Check around the edges to make sure you don't see any of those dark threads. And here's the baby from the mother. There's all those threads. See it on my hand there. Just wash them off. Check on the edges. They tend to stick more on the edges. Sometimes they get in like little pockets on the edge. You just get your finger in there and clean them out. Looks good. Put that in the hotel. Here's one from the hotel. Has threads on it. Put that in the hotel. Here's one from the hotel that's making a baby. Put that back in the hotel too. And here's two more. Now this one is new, but it's not quite ready to come off. Sometimes you can start peeling them off, but that's still on there really well, so I'm going to leave it. And that's going to go back in the hotel. I usually throw one out every week, but I won't this week. And there's a little bit of older processed kombucha in here. I'm going to put that in the jar. And in the big jar. I've already added some of the older kombucha to the big jar too. And I always take my spoon handle and I push the scobies down into the liquid to make sure that they're all getting sweetened tea. That's for the SCOBY Hotel. You can see all those scobies in there. And then I do the same with the big jar. This is the 1 gallon jar. Push it down in there. Make sure it gets in contact. It will float back to the top. Then I rinse the jars with water to make sure there's no sweet tea on the sides and sponge them off before I put them in a warm spot. Then I replace the cheesecloth on top of the jars with a rubber band. I have a double layer. A fine mesh cheesecloth. And there's the 2 jars, all finished. And here's the other second fermented bottles. And that's it. 10 to 12 days, maybe 15 even. If you go longer, you probably want to, or you know you're going to be gone longer, I would put all of them in, all the scobies in a jar with some tea, maybe a 1 quart jar or a half-gallon jar, and make the tea sweeter than normal, so there's enough sugar in there. You can put it in the refrigerator too. I've done that before, and once the SCOBY comes back to room temperature, it's fine. Now I'm going to move the jars that were on the towel. These are the second fermentation jars. They need about 5 days to carbonate, and then after the 5 days I put them in the refrigerator, and I drink them during the 10-day period until the next kombucha is ready to do this whole process over. So I take them, and this is just kind of an out-of-the-way place we have. I have a box, just one of these Sterilizer boxes I got from Walmart, and I keep them in here for the 10 days, just so they're out of the way in a warm area so they can carbonate. So there they are, all ready for 5 days of carbonation. I set my calendar on my phone with a reminder for the 5th day so I can remember to put them in the refrigerator. You absolutely need to refrigerate them for 24 hours until they're cold before you open the bottle, or you may have an explosive situation. Thank you for watching my channel and watching my video about how to make kombucha. I do this a lot. I do it every 10 or so days. I've been doing it for at least 4 years now. I've gone through a lot of trouble trying to figure out different flavorings and the fruit juices with the sugar, and I do not add any sugar of any kind, honey or otherwise, into the bottles for the second fermentation. It's not necessary. That way the resulting kombucha isn't too sweet, and I use the carbonated kombucha just to drink, or you can also use it as a mixer, and then you can stop drinking carbonated bottled beverages like Coca-Cola and 7-Up and all that from the grocery store. And it's healthy for you. It's a probiotic. It's supposed to help your gut. It does give you gas, but I eat a lot of vegetables and beans and everything, so gas is a way of life. Okay? Let's see, what else can I tell you? Just be clean. You don't have to be sterile. You don't have to buy that sterilizing stuff that you do for bottling wine and beer. You just have to use hot soapy water. Keep everything clean. Other kinds of flavorings I've done. This one I did is hibiscus and ginger. I've also done lavender with lemon rind and ginger. That is really tasty. And I've done elderflower with ginger. I usually put ginger in every time, but sometimes I run out of ginger, so I don't put ginger in either. And those are pretty good. One time I tried orange rind. That was really good. And orange rind with lavender. That was really good. Not the orange itself, just the rind. I peel off the rind. It's really yummy. And I really like having the kombucha. It's a nice bubbly treat. And on Weight Watchers, a 16-ounce glass is 1 point. Just a little extra information for you. Thank you, and I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I don't upload as much as a lot of other people on YouTube, but I try to remember to do things that are useful and have good information for you. And if you want, you can push the notification bell, and that will give you a reminder for the next time I upload a video. Thank you. Watching my kombucha process video. I hope you like it. That's all the details from when you first make the tea, the day before or the morning before, until when I do the second fermentation and refresh the tea for the scoby to create new kombucha in 10 to 15 days. I keep my scoby at a room temperature of at least 64, 65. I used to think that we had to keep it at around 70 because that's what you do for beer and wine, but it's not actually important for kombucha. Just don't keep it in 30s or 40s or even 50s because then it'll develop mold and it'll die. Alright, thank you very much. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. If you don't have a YouTube page, create one and join the movement. And then you can like other people's videos and subscribe to channels you like. And that's something to do, to watch. That's better than just watching mainstream television. And then if you really like my videos, you can click the notify button and it will send you an email when I upload a video. And I try to do it when I can or I remember to do it. So I hope you like this and I'll see you later.